Hello, it's Fran Davidson from Psychic and Energy Work. Thanks for tuning in to this video about intuition versus imagination. It's something I get asked about reasonably often from clients as well as just mates, friends, people I meet, as well as students. Perhaps amongst students it's the loudest question, and it's a question I'd argue that is really worth exploring. It's a question that should be nurtured and respected every time it comes up, simply because usually it's flowing from a place of integrity. It's flowing from a concern to not be deluded and to not delude others on one's journey. And that's something we should always encourage and respect. That said, intuition is very different from imagination. Imagination could be seen as you make it up. And of course, hello, that is the definition of imagining. But that's where it gets interesting from an energetic level, because something that is imagined flows out of us as an experience, as an event. In other words, broadly speaking, not necessarily because this is the exact location from which it flows, but we have to imagine it in our body first, in our awareness first, in us first, and then it flows out. So energetically, it has that sensation, and you can actually tap into this and build this as an awareness if you wish to. Intuition, however, it just pops in. So you may hear there how imagination comes from in here, outwards, whereas intuition comes from out towards, whether that's on a feeling level, on a visual level, on an audio level. If you imagine something, you have to start with a blank canvas and generate it from there. And so on one level, you could argue that that is akin to getting a blank piece of paper and drawing a picture before it is finished, before you can hand it to somebody else. Not necessarily because you wait to hand it to somebody else until you've finished the whole page. But imagining something is like that. You have to start with a blank canvas within you, and then you have to visualize or find the words before you let it out of you as an expression or something that you share. Intuition, however, is a dynamic that travels to an individual and onto an individual from the outside, always on an energetic level. And so something that is very common as an expression with intuition is it just popped in. I just sort of got a picture about that. I got an image about that. I picture you doing this when you're talking that. Or I just know. Somebody asked me that question and the idea just popped into my mind. Or I was just washing up this morning and I just got these words popped into my head. Intuition always pops in. It always emerges outside of the context that you and your awareness are currently located. And this is why intuitive practitioners can literally say to their client, what I'm telling you is real. Does that necessarily make it spiritual? No, not necessarily. But the intuitive realm, just like the imaginary realm, not that I said that very well, the intuitive realm as well as the imaginary realm, yes, they both stem out of invisible places, non-physical places, and therefore, on one level, non-provable in that moment places. The difference is that intuitive information always flows from a source that is outside of us. That gets us into the next discussion, and therefore the next video, that is talking about, okay, so just because it's intuitive doesn't mean that it's spiritual. And the answer to that is no. Tune into that video if you're interested. So in closing, I'll give you an exercise to the degree that you'd like one. The best way to develop your awareness, or perhaps two ways to develop your awareness as to whether something is intuitive or imagination. The first exercise would be remember, any time where, hello, you just sort of knew something, or something just popped in as a friend or a relative or a colleague was speaking? Why is it that you just sort of know? How does it pop into you? Are you sitting there consciously trying to make up an answer? Or is it that it just pops in, it just sort of comes from nowhere? If the answer is the latter, you're talking about your intuition. Sometimes it can help to work through this exercise from a number of angles. In other words, think of more than one occasion and include in this the realm of dreams, because dreams are also part of the intuitive realm. How many times have you dreamt something that's come through for yourself or for somebody else, or even just about a world event? These things can happen, and they're all part of intuitive life. Not necessarily for everybody, but certainly for at least a few. The second exercise involves meditation. The task is to get yourself, using breath out through the mouth ideally, allow yourself to meditate. Allow your reference to be that of letting go of mind, letting go of all self-talk, narrative, voices. Come back to quietness, come back to stillness. Allow yourself, as you're doing that, to become quite solid in that as an experience at that moment. In other words, don't just sort of connect to it and then get on to the next bit. So come back to oneness, come back to your spiritual connection, and then in that moment, deliberately break the momentum and think of something that you did earlier that week or earlier in the day. What did I have for breakfast? Think it through. And as you're doing this, notice how the energy around you changes, specifically around your head level. Because the energy of thinking, which is therefore imagining, is a very different vibration to that of receiving intuitive guidance. And the more we become aware of the difference in those dynamics just by doing this exercise, and don't necessarily do it once, do it a few times, not necessarily all on the same day. Whenever something just pops in, you're intuiting, you're picking something up. Is it accurate? May not be. That's not the point. You're intuiting, not imagining. Those two realms are really different. And that's why so many nowadays are getting stuck into their intuitive and spiritual side. It's a part of life. It's a part of life that we are increasingly integrating into the real world, whether that's by choice or because life is sort of cornering us. But it's real. Intuition comes in many forms, in many ways, and it's never imagining, and you can tell the difference. So I hope this video has helped you in some way. If you'd like to develop this as a skill or any other aspect of your intuitive abilities, please don't hesitate to get in contact. But all the very best to you. Travel well, Enjoy the world of intuition.